Mr. Franklin.
I'm Scott Franklin. I'm a Sacramento County Public Defender. I helped create the Sacramento County Veterans Treatment Court. Veterans Court is a personal thing for me. My stepfather is present. He is a disabled American veteran. He has PTSD from his service during the Vietnam era. So when I say that this is a personal thing to me, this is my family. These gentlemen that I represent, and we have 14 now, are American heroes that have served their country honorably and now have hit a snag in the road. So I've taken as many of them as I can and taken them under my wing and helped to put them back on their feet. And they surprise me with their strength of character every time I see them. Many of them are here, and I appreciate their being here, and they can tell you their own stories, but let me tell you this. Public defender's work is tough work. DA's work is tough work. We often see people who are at the worst of their worst, doing horrible things, hurting people, and we're there and we're wondering, how do we get these people to stop doing this, hurting themselves, hurting, and so we're the line district attorneys and line public defenders, and we're saying, this is somebody we can fix. This is somebody we can get out of the criminal justice system and back into the righteous world. And I can tell you that with this population, this is a population you can fix. PTSD is treatable. Traumatic brain injury can be reduced. You can relearn how to do things, and you can make a real difference with this population. So we've begun doing that, and we're proud of that fact. The way we do that is we have to have a very unique team approach where input from all sides is presented in a courtroom, at first behind the scenes and then in front of the veteran themselves. How practically we work is we have a meeting in front of court before the clients come in, and we talk about whether or not they have done well or poorly between their court dates, whether they went to their classes, whether they participated in treatment. We get input from the district attorney's office, probation, their mentors, through their doctors, and we combine that information to make sure that this person is getting the services that they need, not simply just to stay out of the criminal justice system, but to get back on their feet and become a productive member of society. Our goal is not just reducing recidivism, it's restoring these people back to being a good citizen again. That is our goal. And for some people, that means simply just getting them back to a baseline or the ability to be able to participate regularly in society. And for others, it's employment. For many, it's housing and employment, because many of them start with little of that. But in the long run, our goal is simply to restore. It's kind of that idea of you break it, you bought it. We broke them when we asked them to go to service and they suffered the pains of war. So we feel in a debt to try to fix them. I would tell you that the criminal justice system did a poor job with our Vietnam era veterans. We sent them to war, and when they returned, we largely criminalized them and their behaviors. Many of them then led to long-term homelessness. We are not going to let that happen to this generation of American heroes. Not on my watch.
Thank you. Any questions of members? Okay. All right, that's Carrie Reeves.
Hi. As a Solano County Veterans Treatment Court probation officer, I have the honor of working with our veterans who have committed the nonviolent crimes in our community. Our program is designed to meet the high needs of our veterans who have been subject to military sexual trauma, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, and/or mental health disorders that are related to their time in service. Veterans who have chosen to enter our program will participate for 12 to 18 months. Upon acceptance into our program, we work with them to, they meet with our case manager and myself on a weekly basis. Their appointments are used to help positively change their behavior by identifying their criminogenic risks and needs factors through collaborative problem solving, while helping the veteran navigate through the criminal justice and Veterans Administration systems. They are offered services to address addiction, mental health, and co-occurring disorders, and housing needs. The veteran is required to develop a plan of what they would like to accomplish in the program and how they would like to accomplish that. As the probation officer, I also make home visits with the veteran and their families to foster a positive working relationship and to encourage others to assist the veterans in their change process. Part of my responsibility to the Veterans Treatment Court is to make sure that the veteran is in compliance with their conditions of probation set forth by the court. If they are not in compliance, their risks and needs are reassessed by our team. I'm in regular contact with the entire Veterans Court team, service providers, treatment programs, therapists, and counselors. The ultimate goal of probation is to positively change the veteran's behavior by connecting them to appropriate community resources, to promote law-abiding behavior, reduce the risk of recidivism, and to support the veteran with successful transition into the community.
Okay. We'll get some questions in just a bit. Let's finish with the panel then. Robin Shakely, Assistant Chief Deputy District Attorney, Sacramento.
Yes, thank you. I'm in charge of our collaborative courts. I'm in charge of our lifer units. And I find myself bristling a little bit when there's so much emphasis placed upon funding, because money cannot pay for the kind of compassion you just saw for Scott Franklin. Money cannot buy the commitment you see from judges like Judge Abbott. He didn't tell you that the reason he's here and the reason he was approached is that he too was a veteran. And our system works because people who have a personal stake in it are committed to it, because they themselves were veterans or they have loved ones in their families who have been touched by the cost of war. And that's why we're all committed to it. I loved the senator who said we cobble our pennies together to make a dollar, and that's what we do. We take people who are paid to do this work anyway, and they give a little bit more, and their colleagues take over the cases so that they can give a little bit more to this population of men and women who deserve our extra effort. Not for any more money, not for any glory, but because they deserve it, because they gave for us, and we're ready to give back. That's what the program is about, and that's why it works. And it also works because of the mentors. I loved the question that someone asked about what we can do in our CDCR. I do our lifer unit as well, where we go and we attend hearings for people who are serving life terms and they want to get out. And I'll tell you what makes a huge difference in terms of evaluating the success are men and women who are able to get into support groups in prison that address the needs that they have. We have lots of support groups in prison for people who have drug and alcohol problems, but that's just people who generally have drug and alcohol problems as a result of their environment, but not specifically those who have drug and alcohol problems because of their service in the United States military. So I think anything that we can do to encourage volunteer groups to go in and have support groups in prison and work with those men and women, and then those are the people that can write the letters for those men and women when it comes time for them to be considered for release, to see if they have truly worked on the issues which caused them to become participants in that service system. So I'm not in the court daily. It is my responsibility to determine who actually is allowed into the program, and those are not easy decisions to make, because we do take people who have committed serious crimes. We do have, to say we have no recidivism does not mean we don't have blips. Weekly, we have men and women who do test positive, who are given new citations and get new tickets. And these are blips in the road. So it's not to say that once they get into the program and once they're given these services, it's all great and there are no missteps, because we do have missteps and people who fall off the wagon. But that's where the mentors come in, and that's where we're committed to working with them. But all the time that we do this, we also are very aware that public safety is at risk, because these are men and women who come with deep scars that can cause deep anguish for the rest of society too. But we are committed to it, and we thank you for your interest in making it possible.
Deputy District Attorney Shakely, I mentioned a little while ago the program at San Quentin, Veterans Healing Veterans from the Inside Out, and I know Mary Donovan, who testified last week, you kind of alluded to it, to those incarcerated, and some of them are life inmates. They do the worst of the crimes. Are those the kind of programs that we need to try to cultivate more of? I asked that kind of question a little while ago about what do we do while they're in CDCR?
And I
What would
think
you
that's
suggest?
exactly it, Senator. That's it. And I don't think it takes a lot of money, because I think all these men and women that are graduating from our Veterans Treatment Court, they all have the desire to give back. And they all have the desire to go into the pit and deal with the people who are still dealing with the snakes in their heads. So I don't think that this is going to cost a lot of money if we can just encourage these groups to form and to go and to be willing to go into the prisons, because there are prisons in all of our communities. And I wouldn't think it would take much funding at all to find the Mary Donovans of the world that can help to spawn more people like her, and to find more people who are willing to go into the prison to work with this community.
Well, there certainly seem to be a lot who are willing to be mentors. That's encouraging.
Right.
And we spoke last week about, with veterans, the key element of that is the trust. They can trust each other because of their military experiences and their training, and for the rest of society, well, it's a maybe. Is that a fair observation?
I would think it would be. And I think also in the prisons you are going to have, I mean, I see it all the time when I go to lifer hearings, people that committed horrible crimes, but through the years come to grips with their demons. And then they become mentors in the prison system too. So I think we have those men and women in prison right now who can start helping with the groups, as long as they're given support within the institution of forming these groups.
For many reasons, the life inmates have been some of the best once they get it. It takes them time, some of them, sometimes many, many years. But once they do, they become very helpful to their peers in there. One more, and then we can have some more questions. Mr. Grillo, David?
Yes. I'm David Grillo, the coordinator of Justice Outreach Programs with the Department of Veterans Affairs, VA Palo Alto Healthcare System. So our healthcare system covers 9 counties, including 3 that have Veterans Treatment Courts actively, and 4 more counties that are developing Veterans Treatment Courts. So you've heard a little bit about the role of the VA in the courts thus far, so I'll keep my comments relatively brief. Typically, the Veterans Justice Outreach Program from the VA has a specialist assigned to each Veterans Treatment Court, and our role is to provide linkage to VA treatment services for the veterans that are in the court. So we develop treatment plans for veterans as required by the court, and then we help the veteran to navigate the VA system. Typically, this involves linking veterans to the full array of VA services, which is quite extensive. It includes medical services and specialty medical services, inpatient and outpatient mental health, including PTSD specialty treatment, inpatient and outpatient substance use disorder treatment, emergency and transitional housing, employment programs, recreation therapy programs, and the list goes on and on. The courts function very well with VA involvement, as you've heard. And I believe they function even better with additional resources devoted to them. The courts we have that offer additional county services and grant-funded services typically are just able to offer the participants of the court so much more. So I'll just say another brief and related role of the VJO specialist. One of the other core components of our job is jail outreach. So this involves us going into county jail facilities and linking veterans to treatment and supportive services upon their release. So we do this to promote health, healing, dignity, and also to prevent further criminal recidivism. And so veterans do not have to be involved in the Veterans Treatment Court for us to go and see them in jail, but it does offer an opportunity for us to identify more veterans who might be eligible for the courts. And so as part of that, we have several projects going on to increase the number of veterans that we're able to identify in custody. If you ask at booking an inmate, are you a veteran, typically about 3 to 4% will respond yes. But we know when we use a particular software system that automatically identifies every veteran who's ever served, you get about a 9% response rate. So when veterans are in custody, typically they don't want to tell you that they're in custody. They don't want to identify as veterans. So we're working with local county jails to develop this software system with us, to incorporate it. And so we're hopeful that one day we'll be able to identify every single veteran who is in custody They will not have to disclose that to the facility or to their peers, but we will be able to go in and hopefully link them to treatment courts and help them get linked to post-release services. So we currently have this program operating in all of the California state prison facilities. So we're very thankful to the state of California for their cooperation in that. I'll leave it at that for now, and thank you for allowing us to be here.
I believe Senator Roth had a question.
Just a couple, Mr. Chair. With respect to data collection, I'm somewhat familiar with IT systems in the state, including the Judicial Council's effort to put one in place. My understanding is the court system has a data collection system, either it's localized or it's regionalized or it's statewide. Why isn't this data collection effort with respect to veterans courts institutionalized in the existing Superior Court data collection system?
I don't know why. I can tell you that the data that we seek for veterans treatment courts is pretty specific. How many people were terminated, how many dropped out, things of that nature, in order to for this court to understand how well it's doing and to discuss with others. So it could be that it's just a little too specialized for the Judicial Council to say, let's do things this way.
Or it's a module that they have to add to their
It could be.
software platform to collect the data. Has anyone approached either the Judicial Council or any of the local superior courts about adding this to the data collection effort?
No, sir, we've not done that, and I'm going to take note of that because that's an excellent idea.
Well, I'm no expert, so I'll leave it to you, though. Okay, with respect to mental health services, Ms. Reeves, you mentioned that you offer mental health services. How are those offered? Are those offered through the county or through the USDVA or both?
They are offered through the Veterans Administration. We have a county program. We do not utilize it because it can take a very long time to get somebody through that program
In terms of appointments? Or?
as far as appointments go. We are working with a couple of mental health providers who are embedded within our probation department to assist us in getting appointments if need be within our county facility.
What's the average length of time, if you can tell me, for a veteran to secure an appointment through your county mental health services organization?
It would be no different than any other person. I cannot distinguish between a veteran and any other probationer or member of our community. It could be a couple of months before they get an appointment within our program.
Couple of months. Is that generally true in the other counties as well?
I can speak on Sacramento. I'd say 4 to 6 weeks minimum. And then likely the person that they're getting an appointment with is a student who will have absolutely no experience with PTSD. And that's a problem. Most of our programs through the county, don't have a clue what to do with someone with PTSD. They're very good and skilled at somebody with maybe schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or depression or bipolar disorder, kind of the things that they're more typical in our county mental health system. They're not equipped nor trained on how to deal with vets. It's why we funnel everybody we can through the VA system. But it also then limits us in who we can take in our court. We can't take someone who has a less than honorable discharge because we can't provide them services right now. We don't have any way to make sure that they're getting right care because we can't send them to the VA. The VA requires an honorable discharge, has its own requirements of the length of service or combat service that is their minimums to be able to access their care. So those that have something other than an honorable discharge because either they started having symptoms of PTSD during their time in service could be left out in the cold without having someone within the county capable of providing adequate services for that.
Well, just as a follow-up question, I mean, my perception of the participants here today is that these are veterans court programs that are located somewhat conveniently to USDVA treatment facility. Are there veterans court programs that are located in counties which are somewhat less conveniently located to a USDVA treatment facility? And if so, what happens then when you have someone with mental health needs that need services?
I can speak on that.
Diane?
Our county has a difficult time, Solano County has a difficult time with accessing mental health services. Our veterans either have to come up to Mather or they have to go to Martinez. And transportation tends to be a difficulty for our veterans. And we are in the process of developing a protocol for that transportation issue.
How do you handle it? What is the proposed protocol?
Right now, our mentors are taking our veterans to their appointments in a lot of cases.
You can see my concern as we roll out this transitional and supportive housing throughout the state, facilities that may not exactly be conveniently located to a USDVA facility, how we're going to provide supportive services. Well, with respect to the USDVA, yes, sir.
I can offer more on that subject
Perfect.
if you'd like. I'm dealing with some smaller counties now, more remote. Specifically, let me take Calaveras County, which is 2 hours from here in the Gold Country. They are determined to start a Veterans Treatment Court. They're 1 hour from the nearest VA facility, which is okay if we have mentors to do driving and things of that nature, but it's really not sufficient. So we've done a lot of work in that county. Of course, with the VA's rollout of these supportive services out of reach of hospitals and clinics, we're going to take advantage of that program the VA has, and are looking very hard in that county to ensure that that providers who have expertise that can be accessed by county behavioral health could even be funded by the VA in the case of a veteran who is eligible for VA health care. But if they're not, we're still looking for providers who have some expertise. And granted, finding PTSD experts is hard, but not impossible. And one of the key elements there is we're planning to do that without County Behavioral Health having to spend money on it. And the reason is because, according to the Affordable Care Act, you can get, because of the way Covered California has organized itself, if you're eligible for Medicare, Medi-Cal, you can get covered in about 5 minutes, and you can walk over to the doctor's office immediately upon being entered in the database. There's no wait at all. If you're not eligible for Medi-Cal because you have an income, you still are likely, especially if you're caught up in the criminal justice system, to qualify under the Affordable Care Act for some subsidy to your. And if you've been released from jail in the last 60 days, you're in your own open enrollment period. So there's hardly a veteran who cannot get health insurance. They're either eligible for VA health care, and that hopefully could be accessible through contractors, or they can be covered in another way. But County Behavioral Health at Calaveras County is right now scrambling to try to develop what they need to be able to cover those veterans who are not eligible for VA health care, and they're going to do it.
So do each of you attempt to enroll your participants in the Medi-Cal system to the extent they're not already enrolled?
Yes, we supplement some of our guys having Medi-Cal so that we can provide them additional services outside of just the VA, because the VA has its own limitations of the types of classes that they have. So those that have children are going to be easy to qualify. Those that have either a small enough income are going to be able to qualify and be able to get them. Hard parts is then accessing that part, having social workers who can help them through. I mean, persons with traumatic brain injury don't do very well on standardized forms. But getting them someone who can help them get through that process, get coverage, and then use that as a supplemental coverage is good. But then the problem becomes you send them to some place that doesn't have an understanding of who they are or what they've suffered, can lead to the problem of an inflexibility in program that could lead to them not really getting the best out of those services.
So county mental health presumably receives some Prop 63 money, because that's how we deliver, my understanding, mental health services in the state of California. Aside from not having people that are properly trained, have any of you encountered county mental health service resistance in seeing and treating the veteran population? Is that a fair question?
I don't know if I could use the word resistance. I would say that they're not well equipped for dealing with them. So a lot of it comes down to an almost attempt to pass the puck. You have clinicians who don't have that much experience with it. We've gotten lucky that there'll be one or two that may have either worked for the VA at some point in time during their residency or time that might have a little bit more understanding, but many of them just don't. They just don't have an understanding of what it is. So we've largely gone to nonprofits when we could and asked them for assistance. We have one here in Sacramento called Soldiers Project, which is pretty good, that connects our clients to clinicians who volunteer their time. Because again, this is largely a volunteer-based program. Volunteer mentors, DAs and public defenders who volunteer their extra time, their nights, their weekends to make this thing work.
One final question, Mr. Chair, if I may, for the USDVA representative. What's the average length of time, if you can say, at least in the Palo Alto system, that it takes a veteran to secure a mental health appointment?
I do not know the exact figures, but I know that typically we have same-day mental health appointments available. So if a veteran needs mental health assistance, typically they can see someone that same day for a triage to make sure that the person is not in any sort of immediate danger or crisis. Beyond that, an appointment is scheduled beyond that date, but I'm not certain of the length of time between that initial walk-in appointment and the next scheduled appointment.
And just one follow-up: have you encountered any obstacles in delivering the needed mental health services to the participants in these veterans court programs that we've been talking about today? And if so, what?
I don't believe so. I think we have in the courts that I cover, we have a fairly smooth system. But I believe that your previous question brought up a very good point. In instances where a county is located some distance away geographically from the nearest VA facility, I think that will probably be the biggest barrier or challenge that we might have linking folks to services in our more rural counties. So we're working on some things to try to remedy that in terms of, as Duncan mentioned, doing fee-for-service arrangements with local clinicians in the community, and also doing telehealth where a veteran can use video conferencing like Skype to see a VA clinician. So we're working on those challenges, but it's going to be something that will certainly be a challenge going forward with the rural counties.
Well, do you know whether there's any effort ongoing to try to help fund county mental health service organizations to utilize the services and the infrastructure that counties have to deliver mental health services to eligible veterans, funded through grants or otherwise by USDVA?
I'm not familiar with any such activity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Allen has joined us now. Thank you, Senator, for joining in. Any of you for comment? I'd like to try to see if we could establish some linkage with the hearing last week, the veteran service officers and all of the handoff that you do. What do you see as any of the role of the veteran service officers?
Can I talk about one of the new duties of the veteran service officers in our county?
How do they interface with you? Do you interface with them?
So we've heard a little bit about this divide between the real 3% and the 9%, and we actually think it's about 12%. That's the number of persons that are in custody that are veterans, is about 12%, we think. And that's because veterans don't identify themselves as veterans. Many of them, and many of them that are here, don't want to admit that they're a veteran at some point in time during the process because they're almost embarrassed by the fact that now they're in the criminal justice system. So there's many who don't self-identify. There's some programs and computer systems, if your jail is willing to share information, that can help identify those. But the Judicial Council actually has now enacted, based upon Senate Bill 1110 from last year, that created an advisement at the period of time of arraignment by the court, telling a person, and every single person, whether they're a veteran or not, that if you are a veteran, then you may qualify for special programs. and you should discuss that fact with your lawyer. And then they've created with that a form that is actually supposed to be sent to the county veteran service officer for proof that that person is in fact a veteran. Why does that matter? Well, if you're a judge like ours that came here before you, but you're a judge at an early arraignment hearing or a bail hearing, and you know someone's a veteran, you might be more inclined to say, I'm more willing to trust to release you. I'm certainly more willing to trust to release you if I know I can connect you to services during that time frame. And we've had success in Sacramento County because I've been training our lawyers, both on the private bar and on the public defender side, to start identifying veterans early in the process, go to the judge and say, Judge, this person's a veteran. He shouldn't linger in custody if we can get him into a treatment program. The veteran service officers in our county have been great about then setting us an appointment potentially the next day or certainly within a short time frame to be able to show that judge, we're going to get this person out, we're going to get them in treatment, and that's going to make a judge feel significantly more comfortable releasing that person either on a reduced bail or on their own recognizance. So that's one of those things that specifically legislatively your office has done that's actually helping. It also helps out our veterans treatment courts because we're now getting to know these veterans early on in the game and can start trying to get them directed towards the services. So we can build up to the district attorney's office proof that this person's gonna follow those set of orders, which makes it a lot easier for them to say, all right, we'll give this guy a chance.